James Brereton with you here in Charlotte, North Carolina. We've just been watching a live update from NASA where we heard that they're going to be, for the first time, bringing an American crew home early from the International Space Station due to a medical emergency. While 25 years on the International Space Station has not led them to bringing a crew home early, this will be the first time that a so-called medical incident has occurred and has led them to bringing that crew home early. Certainly in 25 years aboard the International Space Station or with space shuttle programs and Apollo programs, so on and so forth, there have been in the past medical incidences that have occurred. But a lot of those were treated on board and the mission continued. This is the first time officials during the life of the International Space Station, American officials, have decided to bring a crew home early. We still don't know which of the four Crew-11 astronauts is the one that suffered the so-called medical incident. We don't know their name. We don't know what the medical incident was. We do know that their condition is considered stable, and stable enough certainly to fly home. In the next 48 hours, NASA tells us we should learn when that crew will be coming back from the International Space Station. Their Crew Dragon capsule, the one that they flew to the International Space Station, is still docked on the International Space Station, and that is the one they will be flying. NASA is saying that this is not an emergency deorbit. They're just calling it an earlier than usual, earlier than anticipated return home, and they're leaning on their planned contingencies to do that. We heard from officials saying they're going to use their planned landing sites and their planned landing procedures. They're not necessarily expediting in an emergency situation where they need to come home now. They just need to come home at the next safe opportunity to do so. If you missed it at the very beginning, here is what NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman said about the situation. Take a listen.
In these endeavors, including the 25 years of continuous human presence on board the International Space Station, the health and the well-being of our astronauts is always and will be our highest priority. Yesterday, January 7th, a single crew member on board the station experienced a medical situation and is now stable. After discussions with Chief Health and Medical Officer Dr. J.D. Polk and leadership across the agency, I've come to the decision that it's in the best interest of our astronauts to return Crew-11 ahead of their planned departure. Within the coming days, the Dragon Endeavour spacecraft will depart the International Space Station with Commander Zena Cardman, pilot Mike Fink, Kimya Yui from JAXA, and Oleg Platonov of Roscosmos, and safely return them to Earth. We expect to provide a further update within the next 48 hours as to the anticipated undock and reentry timeline. Over the last 5 months, Crew-11 contributed.
And yes, as he said, they've been up there about 5 months for planned crewed missions that typically last at least 6, sometimes up to 8 months. These are a crew of 4. In this case, it's 2 Americans, 1 Japanese, and 1 Russian to make up Crew-11. And they were planning to stay aboard the International Space Station until at least February, when they were going to be relieved by Crew-12. Typically, there's several days where those 2 crews hand off. They're both on the International Space Station before the earlier crew returns home. In this case, Crew-11 is going to come home before Crew-12 is actually on board the International Space Station. As we heard in the update, there will still be 1 American on board, because just like we have a Japanese astronaut and a Russian astronaut composed of this 4-person crew, there is an American astronaut who is flying the Russian crew aboard the International Space Station right now. That's Chris Williams. So he may be tasked with keeping an eye on the American sector of the International Space Station. NASA officials really downplaying what impacts there could be to the ongoing science experiments aboard the International Space Station in the absence of Crew-11, really leaning on, well, Chris Williams is still going to be there. Some of it we can remotely operate, and also saying that the crew was nearly at the end of their mission. But the International Space Station is intended as a science laboratory for astronauts to perform science operations, are intended to help NASA learn more about life in space, whether that's aboard the International Space Station, on future moon missions, or even future Mars missions. So it's anticipated that there must be some impact to some of those experiments that were to be taking place aboard the International Space Station in the weeks between now and when Crew 12 is expected to arrive. Crew 12's earliest launch date, to our current understanding, is sometime in February, the same month that NASA says they could get Artemis 2 up into orbit. And so NASA officials were asked in this news conference if there is any expected impact to the Crew 12 launch or the Artemis 2 launch now that Crew 11 is coming home early. NASA saying these are all different campaigns and they don't impact each other, but that is certainly something that will be worth watching as we still are waiting to learn a little bit more about all the different launch windows for Artemis 2, which will be the first crewed mission back to the moon since the Apollo programs. This Artemis 2 program will be bringing 4 astronauts around the moon, with the earliest launch opportunities being essentially that first weekend in February. So once again, recapping the breaking news here, NASA is bringing home early Crew 11. They'll be coming back to Earth from the International Space Station after one of the astronauts suffered a medical incident earlier this week, which we first learned about back here on Earth after NASA announced the cancellation of a planned spacewalk, which was intended to take place today, and they was going to do work on some of the solar arrays that help generate solar power the space station. We do not know the identity of the astronaut who suffered the medical incident. We do not know the nature of the medical incident other than hearing it described as a serious medical incident in which their fellow crew members came to their aid. But this astronaut will be flying home early with their colleagues aboard Crew 11, and we're expected to learn when and where they will be returning to Earth in the next 48 hours. That's been the latest here from the Carolina Weather Group. I'm James Brierton. Stay subscribed for updates on this and other missions as a busy time ahead for NASA. Until then, be well. Talk to you soon.